On the afternoon of June 13th, 2001, a 19-year-old college student left his house to walk less than 10 minutes to meet a coworker. He never arrived. There were no screams, no signs of a struggle, no abandoned car, no suspicious phone calls, no ransom demand, no CCTV showing him leaving, no confirmed sightings after he stepped outside. More than 20 years later, investigators still cannot explain how someone disappeared from the middle of a quiet Omaha neighborhood in broad daylight. His name was Jason Jolkowski, and to this day, his disappearance remains one of the most baffling unsolved missing person cases in the United States. What makes this case so unsettling isn't just that Jason vanished, it's where he vanished. Not in a remote forest, not during a late-night drive, not while hiking alone. He disappeared while walking through his own neighborhood on a warm summer afternoon. A route he knew well, a route hundreds of people had walked before him, a route that should have taken less than 10 minutes. Somewhere along that short walk, Jason simply ceased to exist. The mystery begins in Omaha, Nebraska. Jason Anthony Jolkowski was 19 years old. Friends described him as dependable, polite, and remarkably mature for his age. He wasn't known for taking unnecessary risks or making impulsive decisions. He still lived with his parents and younger brother while attending college and working part-time. He enjoyed history, science, and radio broadcasting. Those who knew him often described him as quiet rather than shy. He had close friends, got along well with coworkers, and maintained a predictable daily routine. Nothing about his life suggested he wanted to disappear. In fact, he had recently begun thinking seriously about his future. Like many 19-year-olds, Jason was balancing work, school, and family life. June 13th, 2001 began like any other summer day. The weather was warm. Nothing unusual had happened that morning. Jason spent part of the day at home while his parents were at work. His younger brother had also left the house. For a short period, Jason was home alone. Then, sometime during the afternoon, his manager from the fast food restaurant where he worked called unexpectedly. Another employee had become unavailable. Could Jason come in early? He agreed. There was only one problem. His own car wasn't available. Instead of driving to work, Jason made another simple decision. A coworker would pick him up. The meeting point was Benson High School, only a few blocks from his house. The walk should take about 8 minutes. Nothing about the plan seemed unusual. Before leaving, Jason noticed the family's trash cans had been blown farther down the driveway by strong winds. He took a moment to pull them back toward the garage. That small chore would become one of the last confirmed things anyone ever saw him do. A neighbor later remembered seeing Jason outside moving the trash cans. He appeared completely normal. No one noticed anyone following him. No unfamiliar vehicles attracted attention. No argument. No disturbance. Just a young man doing an ordinary household task. A few minutes later, Jason left on foot. He wasn't carrying luggage. He wasn't dressed for travel. He carried only what he needed for work. According to investigators, he wore a white t-shirt, lightweight overshirt, blue jeans, and tennis shoes. He walked away from his home, toward Benson High School. His coworker arrived at the school parking lot exactly as planned. They waited. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Jason never appeared. Assuming he had changed his mind or found another ride, the coworker eventually left for work alone. No one considered it an emergency. After all, Jason lived only a few blocks away. Perhaps he overslept. Perhaps he decided not to come. Perhaps something unexpected had delayed him. It didn't seem alarming. Hours later, Jason failed to report for work. That was unlike him. His employer became concerned. When Jason still hadn't returned home that evening, his parents knew something was terribly wrong. He had no history of running away. He never disappeared without telling someone. He always stayed in contact with his family. As night fell, Jason's parents began calling friends and relatives. No one had seen him. No one had spoken to him. The next morning, they contacted police. Investigators immediately began reconstructing Jason's final known movements. What they discovered only deepened the mystery. The last confirmed sighting came from the neighbor who saw Jason moving the trash cans outside his family's home. After that, Nothing. No witness could say they watched him walk down the street. No one remembered passing him on the sidewalk. No nearby business reported seeing him. No surveillance camera captured him. It was as though he vanished somewhere between his driveway and a high school parking lot less than a mile away. Detectives searched the route repeatedly. They knocked on doors. They interviewed neighbors. They examined vacant lots, alleys, drainage areas, and nearby buildings. Search teams looked for any sign that Jason might have fallen, become injured, or wandered off. Nothing was found. Not a single personal belonging. No wallet. No clothing. No footprints. No evidence of violence. Nothing. As investigators mapped the route Jason most likely would have taken, another troubling realization emerged. The distance between his home and Benson High School was incredibly short. Even walking slowly, the trip should have taken only a few minutes. If someone had intercepted Jason, it would have happened in the middle of the afternoon, inside a residential neighborhood, without anyone reporting screams, a struggle, or suspicious activity. That possibility seemed almost impossible. Yet every alternative seemed even less likely. Jason had no known enemies, no financial troubles, no indication he planned to leave town. His bank accounts remained untouched. He never used his identification. He never contacted family or friends again. As investigators dug deeper into his background, they uncovered an unusual detail from several years earlier. Jason had once told family members about a strange encounter while working at his previous job. An unknown man had repeatedly tried persuading him to get into a vehicle. Jason refused. The incident ended without violence. At the time, it seemed like nothing more than an uncomfortable experience. After Jason disappeared, his family couldn't stop wondering. Was it completely unrelated? Or had someone been watching him long before June 13th, 2001? Police investigated every lead they could find, but they found nothing connecting that earlier encounter to Jason's disappearance. Still, the question has lingered for more than 2 decades. Because when a 19-year-old disappears during an 8-minute walk, every unexplained detail suddenly matters. And investigators were about to discover that Jason's route to work contained far more unanswered questions than anyone had first imagined. As days turned into weeks, investigators found themselves confronting a case unlike almost any they had seen before. Normally, a missing person investigation begins with something: a vehicle, a phone call, a witness, a surveillance camera, a credit card transaction, an abandoned backpack. Jason left behind none of those. It was almost as if the investigation started with the answer already missing. Police retraced the route Jason would most likely have walked. From his family's home to Benson High School, there were several possible paths. Each one was searched repeatedly. Officers knocked on doors. Residents were interviewed. Vacant lots were examined. Garages and abandoned buildings were checked. Nothing. One detail continued to bother detectives. Jason disappeared in the middle of the afternoon. This wasn't 3 o'clock in the morning. Children were outside. People were mowing lawns. Residents were coming home from work. Neighbors were moving around their properties. If someone forced Jason into a vehicle, how had nobody seen it? And if he willingly entered a vehicle, who was inside? Investigators began speaking to everyone who knew Jason. Family members described him as responsible and dependable. Friends said he rarely missed work. Coworkers couldn't remember him talking about leaving town or meeting anyone that afternoon. He wasn't involved with drugs. He wasn't known to gamble. He wasn't hiding from debt collectors. Police found no evidence that Jason had been living a secret life. Everything pointed toward a young man whose future was just beginning. Then detectives discovered another small detail that made the case even stranger. Jason hadn't even planned to work that afternoon. His manager had called only shortly before his shift, asking if he could come in early because another employee couldn't make it. That meant almost nobody outside his workplace should have known Jason would be walking that route at that specific time. Was it simply coincidence? Or did someone see him leave the house and seize an unexpected opportunity? That question has never been answered. Investigators looked closely at the timing. Jason was last seen moving the trash cans shortly after receiving the phone call. His coworker arrived at Benson High School expecting to pick him up. Jason never appeared. The window between those two events was remarkably small. Some investigators have speculated that whatever happened likely occurred within only a few minutes. But where? Police searched every section of the neighborhood. There were no signs of an accident, no blood, no discarded clothing, no indication that Jason had suffered a medical emergency. Hospitals were contacted. No unidentified patient matched his description. County jails were checked. Nothing. As the search expanded beyond Omaha, tips began arriving from across the country. Like many high-profile missing person cases, most of those leads ultimately went nowhere. Several people believed they had seen Jason in other states. One caller claimed he had been spotted working under another name. Another believed they had seen him living on the streets years later. Each report was investigated. None could be confirmed. Months passed, then years. Jason's bank account remained untouched. His social security number was never used. He never renewed identification. He never contacted friends. He never reached out to his family. For investigators, this strongly suggested one thing: Jason had not voluntarily disappeared. Meanwhile, detectives continued exploring another possibility. Could Jason have accepted a ride? Friends said it wasn't impossible. If someone he recognized stopped beside him and offered a lift to Benson High School, he may have accepted, especially since the distance was short. That theory explains one important fact: no struggle, no screaming, no witnesses reporting someone being forced into a vehicle. But it creates another question. Who would Jason willingly get into a car with? Investigators examined former coworkers, friends, neighbors, extended family, acquaintances, anyone known to own a vehicle in the area. No evidence connected any of them to Jason's disappearance. As time went on, another disturbing realization emerged. The neighborhood itself had very few surveillance cameras in 2001. Doorbell cameras didn't exist. Businesses along Jason's likely route had limited or no usable surveillance. If someone had pulled alongside him in a vehicle, there may have been no camera anywhere capable of recording it. Today, investigators believe modern technology would likely have captured Jason's final movements within minutes. But in the summer of 2001, that technology simply wasn't there. His disappearance occurred during a brief moment in history when someone could vanish between two city blocks without leaving behind a digital footprint. Jason's parents refused to stop searching. They organized awareness campaigns, worked closely with investigators, distributed flyers, spoke with the media, appealed directly to the public. Years later, Jason's mother, Kelly Jolkowski, founded an organization dedicated to supporting families of missing adults. Her message has remained remarkably consistent. Someone knows something. Someone saw Jason that afternoon. Perhaps they didn't realize its importance at the time. Perhaps they assumed police already knew. Or perhaps someone has remained silent for more than 20 years. Investigators have never publicly identified a suspect. They have never announced a person of interest. No arrests have been made. No physical evidence has ever connected anyone to Jason's disappearance. That lack of evidence has allowed countless theories to emerge. Some believe Jason was the victim of an opportunistic abduction. Others think he encountered someone he trusted. A few speculate he may have interrupted a crime in progress. But each theory runs into the same obstacle. There is almost no evidence to support any of them. Unlike many missing person investigations, there is no abandoned vehicle to examine, no mysterious phone call to analyze, no surveillance footage to study frame by frame, no final text message, just one ordinary walk. That ended without explanation, and the deeper investigators looked, the more impossible the mystery became, because by every reasonable expectation, someone should have seen Jason Jolkowski. Someone should have remembered passing him. Someone should have noticed a suspicious vehicle. Yet after thousands of interviews and years of investigation, the only confirmed fact remained painfully simple. Jason left home, and then nothing. More than 2 decades have passed since Jason Jolkowski walked out of his house. The neighborhood has changed. Children who played on those streets are now adults. New families have moved into the homes investigators once searched door to door. But one question has never changed. How does someone disappear during an 8-minute walk in broad daylight? Today, Jason's case remains one of the most perplexing missing person investigations in the United States because it doesn't fit any familiar pattern. If he had planned to run away, why leave everything behind? His wallet, his bank account, his family, his future. Nothing suggests he intended to disappear. If he had been randomly abducted, why did no one see it happen? The streets were not deserted. People were home. Cars passed through the neighborhood. Yet not a single confirmed witness reported seeing Jason after he left his driveway. That fact has frustrated investigators from the very beginning. As the years passed, police periodically re-examined the case with fresh eyes. New detectives reviewed old files. Witnesses were interviewed again. Technology improved. Age-progressed images of Jason were released, showing what he might look like as the years went by. Each time the case returned to the public eye, hundreds of new tips arrived. Some believed Jason had started a new life somewhere else. Others claimed to recognize him in another city. One man insisted he had spoken with Jason years after the disappearance. Another believed he saw him working under a different identity. Every credible lead was investigated. None could be verified. Investigators have repeatedly emphasized one important fact. There has never been any evidence that Jason used his identity after June 13, 2001. No verified employment, no tax records, no driver's license renewals, no confirmed financial activity. No communication with friends or family. For someone who was only 19 years old, that would require disappearing completely from modern society. Police believe that is highly unlikely. Another theory suggests Jason may have accepted a ride from someone he trusted. On the surface, it makes sense. If a familiar face pulled over and offered to drive him the few remaining blocks to Benson High School, Jason may have accepted without hesitation. There would have been no struggle. No screams, no reason for nearby residents to become alarmed. But once again, investigators encountered the same problem. Who? Over the years, detectives investigated friends, coworkers, acquaintances, and individuals known to Jason. No evidence placed any of them with Jason that afternoon. No forensic evidence, no witness statements, no admissions, nothing. Then there is the theory that someone completely unknown crossed Jason's path, an opportunistic predator, someone driving through the neighborhood, someone looking for an isolated victim. Investigators have never ruled that possibility out. But statistically, it presents another difficult question. Why Jason? Why at that exact moment? Remember, Jason wasn't even supposed to be walking that afternoon. His manager called unexpectedly and asked him to come in early. If the phone call had never happened, Jason would likely have remained home. Was whoever took him incredibly lucky? Or did someone happen to see him leave his house and act within minutes? No one knows. There is another reason this case continues to fascinate investigators. Unlike many disappearances, there was never a next clue. Usually, cases evolve. A car is discovered, a phone is found, a witness comes forward, a body is recovered. Jason's investigation simply stops. It ends at the front door of his family's house. Everything after that is speculation. For Jason's parents, that uncertainty has been the hardest part. Without answers, there is no ending, no explanation, no opportunity to grieve with certainty. Only endless questions. Jason's mother, Kelly Jolkowski, transformed that pain into action. She founded Project Jason, a nonprofit organization that supports families of missing persons and raises awareness about disappearances across the United States. What began as a search for one son has helped thousands of other families facing the same nightmare. Yet despite helping so many others, her own questions remain unanswered. What happened during those 8 minutes? Who was the last person to see Jason alive? Was he ever even able to reach the first intersection? Or did something happen almost immediately after he stepped away from home? Those questions have haunted investigators for more than 20 years. Every few years, renewed media attention brings fresh interest to the case. Podcasts revisit the timeline. Television documentaries explore the theories. Online communities analyze maps, witness statements, and neighborhood layouts in extraordinary detail. Despite all of that attention, no one has produced the one piece of evidence capable of explaining Jason's disappearance. Today, the Omaha Police Department still considers Jason Jolkowski's case open and active. Investigators continue to encourage anyone with information, no matter how insignificant it may seem, to come forward, because cold cases are often solved not through dramatic breakthroughs, but because someone finally remembers a small detail they once believed didn't matter. A vehicle parked on a quiet street, a brief conversation, an unfamiliar face, a memory that seemed ordinary at the time. Somewhere, someone knows what happened during those missing 8 minutes. Until that person speaks, Jason Jolkowski's disappearance remains one of America's greatest unsolved mysteries. A young man left home for what should have been the shortest walk of his day. He never reached his destination. He never came back. And more than 20 years later, no one can explain how a person simply vanished between two ordinary city blocks. If you have information regarding the disappearance of Jason Jolkowski, investigators ask that you contact the Omaha Police Department or your local law enforcement agency, because someone, somewhere, still holds the missing piece of this mystery. And until that truth is finally uncovered, Jason's final walk remains unfinished.